Women's Lobby, which is a network about 2,500 women's organizations all over the European Union, but other international organizations too. Some of you know European Women's Lobby are even members of this great network. When I was asked yesterday to speak about gender and technology and social innovations, I was thinking what approach to choose, because I didn't bring any data, and without data it's always just talk. But when it comes to the theme of gender and technology, whenever you open this issue over dinner or a glass of wine, everybody says, oh, women are not as able to do the techniques, the IT, and etc. And it's because the children play differently, have different interests, and it always comes to this discussion, boys and girls, and you know, the girls like to play with dolls, and the boys like Lego, and etc. I find I myself actually in stereotype. For 5 years, my boys, I was buying them Lego for many money and lots of, you know, it costs lots, and they always just put it together. We had to help them, and they never play with it again. And I thought I am in the middle of stereotype. I was actually, they thought they won the Lego. But my boys probably won't ever be technology engineers. They might do some human soft sciences. And I'd like to show you this short video that explains it all. We are all really rooted in great stereotype, and the children too, since they're born.
Look at this, like a DONNE. So you've got DONNE. You're a good little girl, aren't you, Sandy? Look, what does this say? Sweet dreams. Sweet dreams. Ooh, look at this Sophie.
If I were to tell you actually that Sophie is Edward,
Ah,
does that change anything?
I maybe thought, oh, this is a little girl, so I have to give her little girl things.
Hello.
What's this one? Oh, what's that one do? Is that a robot? What about this one? You like that one? What does this one do? Whatever.
You've gone for, you could say, boy toys.
Possibly in my subconscious, but for me, I was just going for what was around me, but the impact of my subconscious was automatically playing a trick on me that I was...
If I tell you that he is actually a girl.
Really?
Yes.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. I suppose it's because of the stereotype.
And then that changed your behaviour towards the child.
It did.
And your behaviour was quite
it did.
directive.
1, 2, 3.
Beep, 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 beep. Do you want to see my robot?
Robot, a car, a puzzle game. I think she's been much more physical in handling the child than the other adults have been with girls.
That really astounded me because I found somebody that had a really open mind.
Surprise. So I automatically went for the pink fluffy toy because I said it was a girl, so I was sort of stereotyping.
I've always thought I was rather more open-minded than that, and I would think, you know, these children's toys, whatever the gender.
It will make me think the next time I'm with a child, so my niece or my nephew, to make sure that I am actually being sort of fair and equal with all of them, and just giving each child an opportunity to just be whoever they are.
So thank you for watching. I'd just like to open the discussion on the gender and technology. I think when we give the children the same opportunity to learn, since they are children, the women will be as successful in technologies as men. And it's actually shown in the present technology, in the high-tech and the social innovations, or the IT, while the women are able to get into the field, they are as capable as men, but it's often very hard for them to actually get at the same position as men. And I think this is a great opportunity, but also a danger. We are in the Czech Republic, we lately talking about the digital revolution that is ahead of us. Right now we are approaching a new age, and we see the opportunity for women, for the equality of women and men, because we want the work will be more flexible. You won't need your strength as much as people used to, but there is also danger for actually women to become more unequal, because when they don't get to the same position at the technical firms and companies, they will stay at the positions taking care of children, taking care of elder people, and these works are much worse paid. So there will be a bigger gap between men and women. So I think we should think about this at the beginning of the digital revolution, and try to actually take the best out of it and make sure that the women become more equal to men. I also think that part of it is science. We have a member organizations that are dealing with gender and sociology, and also we have these organizations called National Contact Center, and they're helping women in science, because as I said before, we can see similarities in the statistics in Israel, in the Czech Republic, in the European Union. Also, within science, there is great discrimination of women because of their motherhood, because they cannot approach some fields in science. And actually, when there is a couple of women there, they inspire the young girls to choose the field, and that's how we have more women in science, in technology, and in the business too. Thank you for attention, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Let's proceed directly to Sylvia, and then we can open a small, short discussion. The discussion, of course, can continue during the breaks because we don't have any more official time.
Thank you. So, hello again. I introduced myself I think 3 times, but I can do it once again. I'm Sylvia. I'm from Czech Republic. I work for a weekly magazine called Respect. I have one copy here. It looks like this. And I'm going to be talking about the media landscape, but specifically about my magazine, because what we're trying to do is we work with the gender topic in our work in order to influence the media landscape, because we are very much aware that media are very, very powerful and they can influence how people see the world. And we accept and recognize this responsibility we have. Not many journalists do, but we do. And regarding the gender topics or gender-related topics, I want to talk about sort of two legs our approach has. One is the form and one is the content. And when I talk about the form, I mean that we are very much aware how the language and the pictures can influence this, what I'm going to talk about. So, for instance, we focus on the fact that we don't stress physical attributes of women unless it's their job or unless it's part of the story. I'll tell you concrete examples where when we experience a lot of angry emails, when we had an article about people who look after burned victims. And it was mentioned there that it's extremely difficult field of medicine for the doctors and for the nurses, because the victims are clearly very traumatized and it's all very difficult. And it mentioned several doctors, and then it mentioned a nurse, and it said she was a tiny little fragile blonde woman. And I got personally very angry that this was actually printed in my magazine and I did not see the article because it was printed. It didn't say anything about the doctors, anything about their physical attributes, if they were handsome or tall or anything else. It was mainly focused on their professional jobs. So, for instance, this is something we try to focus on. Other parties, we never ever ask women in interviews, and that happens very often in Czech media and also in other media, how they're managing to combine the family and work. The reason is, no one asks men this. You will never have an interview with the Prime Minister or a minister saying, how on earth are you managing, to look after your kids? No one asks them that. However, the female ministers or the female CEO get asked these questions all the time, so we focus on that. Another thing we do is, when we have an interview in the magazine, there's a little profile accompanying the interview. And I noticed, and I personally changed this practice, that we mention the marital status and the kids exclusively when the woman is interviewed. You never know if a guy who just is a scientist has 4 kids and is married or divorced, but a female scientist is divorced and have 3 kids. So what we did was, there were 2 options, either not mention it at all or mention it with everyone. So we took the second one. So now if you read an interview with a lawyer or whoever who's a male, you always know if he is married or single or how many kids does he have. We even sort of made a joke recently. There was this elderly gentleman, and we even mentioned his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. People laughed and said, what is this about? We said, well, we decided to, mention the family status even with the men. Also, in the form section, I would like to mention language. I'm not sure how is it in French or in Italian. It's a little bit in English. You have different words for male representatives of certain profession and female. I think the obvious English example is actor and actress. And it's the same in Czech. However, the general attitude is to use only the male version, even though you inform about women as well, because it's sort of shorter. We have this great discussion with linguists who say, well, it's the beauty of the Czech and you're destroying it by putting the female version in it. It's about the language. However, sometimes it has absurd consequences. There was this story recently when a team of 5 female scientists won an award, and in the Czech media it was only mentioned in the male version. So it was literally like, mentioning a movie with only actresses and you would say it was full of actors. Well, no, they were female scientists. So we also try, of course there are some limits, but you can't put it in every sentence. It would actually not be a nice language, but sometimes you can do that. And there are so many other things about the form, so to speak. But now we'll go to the second leg of the approach, and that's content. I am completely obsessed with a famous Czech politician who is called Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk. He was actually a founder of independent Czechoslovak state. who, by the way, no longer exists. Czechoslovakia doesn't exist for 25 years, just to say, just to mention. But anyway, he was a great feminist and a great social fighter and innovator. And just a little story for you to see what kind of man he was. Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, his wife was called Charlotte Garrigue, as she was an American woman. So he took in the late 19th century his wife's surname. And that was revolutionary even now, but it was revolutionary then. What he said was, there are no female topics. There is no female question. There is only a question of humans and of society. So when I talk about content, I do not believe in female topics in media. The topics we talk about, all of them regard men as well. Even when we talk about kids, I mean, I joke that even if we talk about women's periods, it's a men's issue as well. So there are no female topics. And again, there are several approaches how to manage the content, what to do with the content. For me, what's most important is you need to, as a journalist, and that's what I do, include women in the articles. So I always try to think that if I'm writing about a specific problem, that am I quoting only men in the article, or have I done enough to find, if I don't know them yet, female specialists, female scientists, female politicians to also comment on the article. Of course, that doesn't mean I'm putting people who have nothing to say in the articles, but I am consciously trying to work with the fact that you very often only hear male experts in the media. And regarding the topics, I wrote so many articles recently which actually were a lot of attention, which I was very pleased, because nothing is worse for the journalist when no one cares about what you wrote. But also carried a lot of attention also in a negative way. And for me, it's pushing the boundaries of what I think one of the roles of a journalist is to discover topics and angles no one has yet discovered and saw. And I can mention several articles I wrote recently which were they changed the discourse in the Czech Republic, or, I don't want to say that I changed the discourse, but they gained some attention. For instance, I wrote recently about men's fertility. There are so many studies recently that show that there are some challenges in men's fertility. I don't want to go into details because I would feel strange to be at a conference such as this and talk about sperm, but it's regarding sperm and other functions of the reproductive system. And this was very important because when you look at the discussion in the media, the focus is on women. We have old mothers. Women wait too long to have kids. Women all of a sudden wake up when they're 40 and then they want children, and then our society are influenced by the fact that women don't want kids. And when you shift the focus and you look at men, you realize men also wait quite long to have kids because they're convinced they can have kids whenever they want. And now scientists and doctors tell you it's not the case. They also have challenges, and they should not wait too long to have kids. So this is an example of a topic that's being either not discussed at all. Oh, I have time. I have 3 more minutes. Either they're not discussed at all, or the angle is shifted in a way that confirms certain stereotypes rather than discovers new way how to look at things and look at the society. And in my 2 last minutes, I thought I would use these 2 minutes for some recommendations, because I know many of you are here from NGOs and certain organizations, and maybe you are thinking, how can I get topics which are important for me, or I consider important, into the media? And I feel that there are 2 recommendations.